Hello, everybody, and welcome to Worldsmithing, where we take a topic and then we world build it. We start micro, we go macro, we do some intro, and today, the last episode of our Fantasy Egypt, we're going to do session 1. I'm Cody.
And I'm Joe.
Yeah, that was a bit of a mouthful. I kind of got ahead of myself.
I was trying to think of something fun and creative to say. And
which is ironic
me.
Because in our probably arguably our most creative of the podcast episodes that we do, we didn't have anything to do for this one.
I don't know, the bits come to me. They come to me in dreams.
Yeah, it's kind of like a muse, you know, you hear it and you're like, oh yes, the bit. And you just reach out for it, but then it's fleeting.
It's true. It's like a Fleetwood Mac.
Ooh, I don't...
Got the joke in there. Alrighty. Hey, so, Cody, have you been?
I've been doing well. I've been doing a lot of... I've actually been doing a lot of world building myself for another project, for a home personal game. So, ooh. I've been doing a lot of world building as of late. So this show is my outlet for that.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, what about you?
You know what? Ironically enough, I've also been doing a little bit of world building. But
gasp!
I have a friend who wants to collaborate on maybe doing some short stories together or something.
Oh, cool.
So we've been kind of working on building a world. So
hell yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah. Coming up with rules and mechanics. We both kind of talked about things we like and things we dislike. I have this fascinating thought in my head of I might have said this on the podcast before, but it hit me at some point that we think of Lord of the Rings as this sort of snow globe of a thing, right?
Okay.
But let's, because it's try to think of the Lord of the Rings in anything other than sword and shield era, Middle Ages.
Right.
It's really hard to do, right?
Yeah.
But it's it hit me at some point that it's man, there are probably little kids who have to take boring school field trips to Helm's Deep and listen to some ancient guy just being and then over there, that's where the 10,000 orcs came, or Uruk-hai came and stuff. And it's for us, it's really cool because we're seeing it in real time, but we've all been to historic sites and things like that. And sometimes if you don't have the best tour guide, that can be a little bit. And I was man, what does 1920s, what does 1920s Middle Earth look like?
Right.
How does technology develop, if technology develops at all? And it hit me one of the things that's really difficult about the 1920s, and not to jump ahead and world, maybe this is something we could do on Lore Masters at some point or something like that. But it's I feel one of the reasons why so many stories that are set in the 1920s are they tend to focus on police officers or criminals, and that's because it's that era, people were just so incredibly tied to their job. The only real occupation with any sort of extensive amount of urban mobility was police officers. But this is just something I was, some things I'm ruminating on and just having, weird little thoughts to myself about what would this look like, and what would this look like, and what would this look like. So
yeah, absolutely. It sounds rad. I like it.
It's just for funsies, but who knows? Maybe something will come of it.
Yeah. So, I guess we should just get right into it, huh?
Yeah, dive in. Splash.
So we've been doing Fantasy Egypt for the last 3 episodes, this being the 4th. And we've
That's correct.
We've talked a lot about Fantasy Egypt, both from the macro level, the micro level, and then now we're going to take the stuff that we built or, thought about and put into the kind of a concrete, notebook,
jungle,
if you will, or figurative notebook. And we're going to make a session 1. We're going to, from this point, we should, take the stuff that we've learned and gained from this and put it into context that we're going to use, which is doing a tabletop role-playing game night where this might be the one shot, or this might be the start of the campaign. Who knows? So
who knows?
Definitely, if this is your first time watching Worldsmithing, definitely check out our other stuff before you watch this one, or a lot of this will just kind of be like, huh? I don't really understand what's going on.
Some gobbledygook.
Yeah, a bunch of crazy nonsense. But that being said, we're gonna take turns basically showing you, the viewer, the audience, what this is gonna be, what this is gonna look like. So, the introduction, or the intro, if you will. The party finds themselves in Cairo, Egypt. It's a hot day. They meet at the Long Bar in the Shepherd's Hotel. People of all walks of life coming and going, getting a drink or two. They meet their boss, Adam, who has found a booth away from prying eyes. He tasks the party with investigating the League of Adventurers. He's seen a recent influx of them, which can never be good. They will need to find Ibrahim in the wall market in order to find out what it is they're up to. Now, at this point, the party would introduce themselves, maybe their walk of life or what they're doing, this kind of thing. But as they investigate further, or, ask Adam more questions, he will tell the party that the Pharaoh had an intense vision about something coming that would throw Egypt into chaos. And while Adam has some ideas, it's safer and quicker to find out what's going on through Ibrahim, as he always has his ear to the ground. He will task the party with finding him, and then find out what they're after and dealing with it. At this point, the party would, converse amongst themselves, figuring out a plan of attack, or just kind of going in headlong. But as the party leaves the Long Bar at the Shepherd's Hotel and goes out into the mean streets of Cairo, they start to notice very quickly that the crowd that is kind of coming and going, there's a couple of eyes that are starting to follow them. At first it's maybe one or two, but as they get out into the big open streets, they have quite a big crowd following them, which leads to...
Yes. So this is the first encounter, which I'm referring to as the chase through the Khan al-Khalili. So as the party leaves the Shepherd's Hotel, they notice that a large number of the seemingly innocent patrons throughout the lobby begin to leave with them, as Cody just mentioned. They are being followed by members of the Leagues of Explorers, trying to prevent the party from getting to Ibrahim first and getting the crucial information to guide required to help them. So, the party tries to hide themselves in the great marketplace of Cairo, but it's no use. These goons from the League of Explorers are preventing them from trying to get to their final goal. So they have to duck, bob, and weave their way through the marketplace. This is when the party has to start making decisions. What's the way how do they go? Do they try to create distractions by causing destruction? Do they try to go above and beyond the marketplace to potentially find their route faster? Do they try to fight these goons? Is that even something that's feasible? Is it something that's safe to do in this great marketplace? During this time, the party needs to decide things like different ways. Maybe they can create distractions or traps. Perhaps maybe one person can get into a kerfuffle with some random and create a big, what's the word I'm looking for? A big scene in the marketplace, I suppose. So basically, the main objective of this part is to try to lose these marks. And find Ibrahim. You have a vague idea of where he is, but as you're racing through the Kal al-Khalil, you realize that this place is massive and labyrinthine, and even though you have a good knowledge of the streets of Cairo and this marketplace in particular, it's still difficult for even the most world-weary traveler to find anything that quickly. Unless, of course, you're Ibrahim. So basically... during this time, this is when we're going to have a variety of skill checks perhaps like athletics checks or acrobatics checks, deception checks or stealth checks. Most of those maybe even an intimidation check or two. Basically, this gives the party the ability to like try out some of their skills, showcase some of their skills, maybe try out like a fancy move that they might have here or there. So their objective is to just lose these marks. Now, the next, so that leads us into our second encounter, which is a social encounter with Ibrahim. So, after a desperate chase through the marketplace, and the party, hopefully, successfully evades the League of Explorers, or maybe they let them get away, they successfully find Ibrahim. But, as with everything related to Ibrahim, he proves to be more difficult than he's worth. This scene takes place in Ibrahim's back room, the place where you can find the real artifacts and get the real secrets. The party has to pass a series of social encounters with Ibrahim. Basically, they have to pass a collective set of skill checks to get the information out of them, get the information out of him. And this can be in various ways. Perhaps the party uses force or charm. Maybe they trade information for other information, coin, or some combination of that lot. If they succeed, they get the information with little to no problem. And if they fail, well, let's just say there are some other adventurers who would make him a better offer. And a bonus if he betrays you. So this is a chance for... Cody, what do you call those things? Do you have a special name for them?
Yeah, this is fourth edition skill challenge.
Yeah, so I kind of foresaw this as a skill challenge. This gives some time to get some exposition from Ibrahim as he, parcels out little pieces of little tidbits of information here or there. But for, without the connecting tissue, this is all gobbledygook. And with every little tidbit of information he gives, you have to pass an increasingly more difficult skill check in order to get that information. This gives the opportunity for the party to show off some of the more social skills that they might have. So if you have a person who is particularly charismatic, say like a bard or a warlock or a sorcerer, someone like that, this gives them a real chance to shine where they might not have been able to shine quite as much in the marketplace. Now you're probably saying to yourself, well, there hasn't been a lot of combat yet, but I think it's important, especially early on in session 1, to really give your characters a variety of chances to prove their non-combat skills. So that chase was designed to be, a more a skill challenge of the athletic nature, and then this one is a skill challenge of the social nature. Basically, it gives everyone a chance to do maybe at least attempt to do one or two super cool, heroic, not combat related things in ways to make them look and act pretty impressive in those early moments of your first session. So those are the two. So those are my two encounters that I developed.
Yeah.
And then the grand finale. So after receiving the information from Ibrahim, they find themselves at...
The party finally learns that the tomb of King Ramses VIII has recently been dug up, and the League of Explorers are basically they're taking everything out of it. And the party finally reaches the Valley of Kings in order to find this tomb. And instead of the usual Egyptian guard, this area is covered with armed League of Explorer agents, making sure no one gets inside. That being said, the party must find a way to get in. And for me, this is a chance to either do it a couple of different ways. The way I run things is there's, more than one answer to a riddle, and the party must get their way in, and they can do this in a couple of different ways. They can use a series of deception and stealth checks to try to sneak around the guards that are around, or they can go on hot and heavy, resulting in probably a fairly easy combat encounter for them. Once the party enters the tomb proper, they find a series of hallways, and the party must investigate to find the quickest way into the center. The party can use their understanding of the culture and various checks to find out which tunnels are obvious traps and which ones are safer and quicker. I personally would leave some clues and make it so that each hallway changes the way the final encounter goes. So at this point, and this being said, this is an outline. Obviously things are going to change, players are going to do some weird stuff, so obviously feel free as a DM to put in things that we didn't cover, you know. For instance, earlier on, there's not a whole lot of combat. Well, maybe they fail a check and they have to get out, you know, with their brawn instead of their guile. But that being said, once they decide to pick a hallway to go down, from here, there's a series of trapped hallways and rooms that either have some kind of lore about the Cowl of Ra, which is what they're looking for, and maybe some construct encounters or traps to deal with. This is definitely like the dungeon crawly aspect. If you have a lot of time, this is where you would put like a big series of like tunnels and things, and there's traps around every corner. Nothing too difficult because you don't want them to get to the end of this too injured, but enough so that they are constantly checking themselves, because this is where they need to be very careful about how they proceed. That being said, the traps should do some sort of damage, but there should be some visual clues early on to let them know that, like, oh, there are traps here, we need to be careful. So keeping that in mind. And after they've gone through the quote-unquote trap hallways, they finally get to the main burial chamber, and depending on the hallway of their choosing determines how prepared the League of Explorers are for the party. Ideally, this would be a fairly difficult encounter, or at least the quote-unquote finale big boss fight. You know, something pretty difficult, or otherwise pretty like exciting and punchy. They would either encounter Alan Chapman as he is leaving behind, like, you know, leaving this area. And bonus points if you can get him to monologue, because there's nothing like a good villain who can monologue at you. But then the party's attacked by these guards trying to keep you away from the center. And after a intense battle, we would end on them, on the party, getting into the center of this and finding out that the Cowl of Ra is not even here, but rather a cryptic message that leads you to another area within the Valley of Kings, or even into the desert itself. And now we have a cliffhanger that begins a race across Egypt in order to stop Alan Chapman from gaining the fabled piece of ancient Egypt's past.
Fade to Black.
Yeah.
Or that song Roundabout by Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a joke for like 5 people.
Exactly. But that's how session 1 would go. Now, obviously, when we talk through it, you know, we only took about 18-ish minutes to do it, but obviously there's going to be a lot more, because the players are involved and they're going to want to get in, you know, they're going to want to do their own thing. So trust me when I say that while the outline looks kind of, or might appear to be not enough, just based on how long we talked about it, it will be plenty, especially when you're getting into character and talking as all the various NPCs. The fact that, you know, they're going to have to deal with several, or potentially several, combat encounters throughout the session, you will be just fine.
Yeah, I think it's always I've never looked at Cody's notes before, because that would be weird in a lot of different ways, unless you showed me old notes from like the 6 stuff. But yeah, it's my understanding with all of these things that the more simple the better. Like, basically, as Cody explained it to me, because, you know, my GMing experience is limited. Think of it as having them think of your goal, think of your location, and think about the major barrier that stands in their way. If you have at least one of each of those things, then you kind of slot other things in as things go left or right or up or down or wrong. maybe even the gold changes halfway through as well. But like I said, I did not intend my my two encounters to have a lot of combat. But if someone were to go and try to punch Ibrahim in the face, which is something that could very easily happen, who knows, maybe like 10 goons jump out, Ibrahim's paid men, and then suddenly the party finds himself in a brawl. Or perhaps a wrong check means that someone gets captured during that market scene chase, and then the party has to decide, do they continue on to go and find Ibrahim, or do they go back to help their hurt player? And then that kind of creates a domino effect from there. But at the very least, I feel like for most every session, it's always a good idea to have at least 2 to 3 combat, or 2 to 3 encounters or situations planned out in advance. That gives you more than it feels like that should give you more than enough for a 2 to 3 hour plus D&D session.
Absolutely. And the reason we kind of kept this loose as well is if you become rigid and strict about how, like, if you were to like put in like, all right, they go from here to here, and if they fail, this happens, and then if they pass, this happens, you don't really leave a lot of room for the players to get creative in the space. And it kind of, it turns into a railroad. And, maybe some players are into that, and maybe that's, if that's your game, you might need to do a little more prep work. But I like to leave mine open-ended so that when players do try to do unique things that I hadn't planned for, it allows me to say yes and instead of no. Because saying no so often, especially if like it's within the realm of possibility, you just didn't come up with it, kind of leaves the players kind of like, maybe disappointed.
I'm not trying anything.
Yeah, because like they know that like if they do something like that and it's reasonable and you're just saying no because you're the dungeon master, it turns into that very what's the word I'm looking for? It turns into like,
antagonistic.
Yeah, it becomes very like it's a railroad, you go on one track and you get to the end, and it's the DM telling the story, but it's collaborative fun. And that's why or at least that's one of the big reasons why I keep my notes fairly loose. And in some cases, I'll just put like, maybe a couple of sentences down to be like, all right, this is what's going to happen during the session.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed these world-smithing episodes. Definitely comment on our on the videos or on the podcast episodes and let us know what you think, because we enjoy these and we'd like to see what parts you liked, what parts you don't like, various other things. My brother.
Yeah. And if you liked what you heard here and you want to learn more, Cody, what's some ways that people can learn more?
Oh, they could go to our website at www.fandomroulette.com, where they can get all of our episodes and find out what we're doing. And if they go down to the bottom, they can fill out a little. It's not even a form. It's just your internet handle and then whatever you want to talk about. But if you use that to tell us what kind of world building topics you'd like us to tackle, that would be great, because we'd like to do things that the audience is interested in. And that would be super fun to explore things that maybe we didn't think of, or maybe things we thought of but didn't know if there was any interest for it. So you can do all of that and more at our website.
Yeah. And hey, Cody, if people want to reach out to us and talk to us on the various social media platforms, what are some ways that they can do that?
They can go to our Twitter at fandomr_podcast. That is our Twitter handle. That's where we do a lot of our announcements and stuff. But if you want to just like shout at us and tell us how you felt, or
like nicely.
Yeah, not
nicely.
Shouting angrily, but just let us know how you felt about the episodes and stuff. You can do that on Twitter, and you can also get at us on Instagram and Facebook under the Fandom Roulette name.
And if you wanted to share this episode with a friend, what are some places that they can find us?
If you need some various sources, we're kind of on basically everything. Google Play, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud, all your RSS catchers. We're on there. Just gotta search Fandom Roulette.
Yes. And then, please also remember to like, rate, review, and subscribe.
Of course.
Ring the bell.
Smash
leave a nice
it.
message. All of those various things. These are the kinds of things that help you move up through the ranks and get to the big shows. So
Yeah.
But anyway, signing off for Fandom Roulette. This is Joe.
And I'm Cody.
And as always, stay nerdy.
Stay super nerdy.